Welcome to another episode of the Two Act Podcast, a weekly discussion for anime, cinema, and TV. I'm one of your co hosts, Adi, and I'm joined by.
Gothjon.
Welcome back. For this week's recommendation, we'll kick off the new year with a anime recommendation that I have chosen. An anime that came out 10 years ago that just celebrated its 10-year anniversary. It's called Ping Pong the Animation. To give you a bit of an introduction, Ping Pong the Animation is a series that transcends the boundaries of traditional sports anime to deliver a deeply human story of ambition, failure, and self discovery. Directed by Masaaki Yuasa, a visionary known for his bold, unconventional storytelling. This adaptation of Taiyo Matsumoto's manga is as much about the game as it is about the people who play it. At its core, ping pong is an exploration of identity, how our passions shape us, and how the pursuit of perfection can either elevate or break us. The series follows an eclectic, coming of age cast of players, each at a crossroads in their lives, grappling with their inner demons, their relationships to the game, and their desires to win, lose, or simply exist. What sets the series apart is its raw, kinetic visual style. Yuasa's animation isn't concerned with realism. Instead, it distorts and exaggerates, mirroring the emotional intensity of its characters. Every match is a clash, not just of battles, but of philosophies, egos, and dreams. But ping pong is not just about winning, it's about finding joy, confronting failure, redefining what success means, whether it's Smile, whose talent is matched only by his apathy, or Peko, the self proclaimed hero struggling to reclaim his passion. Every character's journey feels deeply personal, yet universally resonant. And I think that's what I can say that I connected with the most is that there's something in each of the characters that in some capacity resonated with me. So, without further ado, let's get to opening thoughts. John, what did you think of Ping Pong the animation?
This one I heard it was like a great anime, so I set my bar pretty high. My first initial thought was, okay, this art style is really hard to get past. But you slightly get used to it eventually. You're just like it looks like not like your typical cookie cutter like manga artists, like something from like Shonen Jump. Even in like this time frame, like I'm expecting like a certain like level of like quality, and it kind of reminded me like Rick and Morty at times with like how like oddly it was drawn.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it is. It has a unique art style, and I
Yeah.
think that is like I feel like that is probably the biggest talking point anyone has when they first come across this, because it looks unlike anime in a way. It's weirdly like yeah, I think it's like I said in the intro, it's kind of like not really realistic, but at the same
Hmm.
time it exaggerates when it needs to, and the characters look like, well, they look kind of Asian. They look like they're actually ethnically
Hmm.
real in a way, but also comically exaggerated. But there's a lot of static frame animation, um,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of like surrealism with the art style. But what I didn't personally have a problem with it. I know that it can be a bit like maybe few people may not be able to get past it, but personally, like once you get past an episode or two,
Yeah.
you just adapt to it. And I think it's an important point because I feel like anime got way too standardized. I miss when styles constantly shifted every 5, 10 years. Like the 80s anime looked nothing like the 90s. which looked nothing like the early 2000s, which looked nothing like the noughties. So, like, in my opinion, I kind of like that it broke from convention. And
Mhm.
Yuasa's work is always really, he tends to go that route a lot with his other works. I haven't personally seen all his other works, but like just from seeing stills and images of like other shows he's done, they're all like wildly different from each
Yeah.
other. Like he does not follow one particular style. But more than that, what really uh resonated with me was like how it was a coming of age story of like all these kids who are teenagers. You've got, I think, the two primary characters is Skimoto Smile, who's like this quiet, unassuming prodigy. Smile's talent for ping pong is undeniable, but his lack of drive and passion holds him back. He's a deeply, introspective character. He plays the game out of habit rather than love, often suppressing like emotion and avoiding conflict. His relationship with Peko is central to the journey as he struggles to reconcile with his innate skill and his search for purpose and true connection to the sport. And then that's juxtaposed with Beko Hoshino, who's like this brash, self-proclaimed hero. He's the heart
He's
of
a
the
brat.
series. He's a brat. Yeah, he's a menace. He's kind of a cocky, you
Yeah,
know,
he's in the beginning he's
know-it-all.
really arrogant, like to a point that it's like a problem. And then
Oh
you
yeah,
got like Smile who's actually like has talent.
yeah, yeah. Although it's like Becco is considered to be superior, but somehow his arrogance kind of like he kind of gets humbled,
Oh,
and
big
it
time.
leads him to a spiral of self-doubt and
Mhm.
disillusionment. And Pecco's journey is like one of redemption, reigniting the passion for the game and rediscovering the joy that defined him, because you know, he is Smile's hero. And I think everyone needs a hero. And the big question that gets asked is, who do you play ping pong for? Do you play it for yourself? Do you play it for your team? And
Play it
then
for
you've
your
got
country.
exactly your country. You've got these
Mm.
other characters who are also part of the show. I really like the choice of having a native Chinese voice actor
Mm.
for voicing Kong Wenge, who's this former champion from China. Kong is exiled to Japan after losing his standing in his home country. He's driven at first by a singular goal of just returning to former glory. But over time, he learns to, appreciate the game beyond competition. And I liked how his character arc had like some of the most uplifting moments in the whole show, because he kind of starts off as this super cocky, naturally talented bad guy.
Yep.
But in
He's just
in
like
private,
Peko.
yeah, he's just dealing with his own problems, and he feels the pressure of being perhaps an immigrant in another country, and he feels like he's somewhere where he doesn't belong. uh some of those feelings I really could resonate with it. I know what it's like to live somewhere else, to
Mm.
move countries, so I could resonate with something in his journey as well, with the struggles he faced, but also like his transformation. I really liked his arc in the show. And then you've got Ryuichi the dragon, who's
The
this
bald guy.
the ball guy, who's in this team of baldies. They're
Whose
just
school takes it a little too seriously. If we're gonna be
they're
honest.
just a bunch of robots, aren't they? They're just
Yeah,
like
yeah, they're crazy. When
he's
they showed you the school, I was like, "The fuck? This is the most anime I've ever seen." And it's just like they take table tennis, they got a machine that like practices serves,
yeah.
and like Dragon's like practicing against it because he wants to get better, even though he's like world champ.
Oh, he's the epitome of perfection and focus. His life
Hmm.
is consumed by the pressure to win
Yeah,
and uphold his family's legacy, leaving
yeah.
him
He's got to spend his
emotionally
time in the bathroom.
detached. Yeah, he's just detached and isolated. But beneath his stoic exterior lies a man longing for freedom from the weight of expectation, making his arc just as poignant a reflection on the cost of success. And then you got Sakuma, who I don't know if you might remember who that guy is, but
He's the
he's
guy with like the odd drawn eyes
yeah,
that are like almost
and
like offensive to a point.
yeah,
That guy's so fucking annoying, and he deserved getting humbled. Deserved it. When Smile took him down, I was there's a couple of times in this show where I'm out of my seat. I'm just like clapping. I'm just like, yeah, you get your shit. You get your shit
yeah.
pushed in.
He was once a promising player, and he was Peko's childhood friend. But
Yeah.
Akuma abandons Ping Pong after a crushing defeat. And he's one of those characters who doesn't necessarily have the natural talent as his uh, peers, but he works way harder than anyone to prove himself. But I think him coming to terms with maybe realizing that ping pong and this obsession isn't for him is also a huge part of the story. And it highlights he retains a deep respect for it, and it highlights his quiet resilience. I really liked how, even though these are the key players who we see throughout the show, and we get to see how each of them and their dynamics play out with each other, like I said, when they face off, it's a clash of not just battles but philosophies too. But I really like how each character shown in this show had maybe microscopic presence in some degree, like some of the supporting characters, but they were always meaningful. And I really appreciated the depth in which the storytellers went to make sure that none of it went to waste. And all of that really comes to the forefront in the middle of the show.
Hmm.
But to begin with, what did you think of the way the show opened with the characters? Was there any particular character you wanted to root for more than the other? Was there
Oh,
one that you just
I
hated?
think I hated the glass guy we are talking about, the crazy
Akuma.
eyes guy. I just hated him. He was annoying. Like I could find like some annoying things with Peko, but he's a dummy. That I just like that sometimes. Like I resonated the most with Smile because I see some of him in myself. Like I am also
Mm.
somebody that wears glasses. I'm a lot more outgoing than him, of course, but um I can definitely relate with that. I can definitely relate with avoiding conflict because that's a part of a lot of my like personality is just like when I'm confronted with like a hard conversation or something, like my stomach rolls in knots. And I'm sure he's in the same way. That's why a lot of the flashbacks are him just like hiding in the closet and he wants like the robot hero to save him, and I'm just like I resonate with that. And then
Yeah, it was deep, pretty deep.
I didn't like Dragon, but I could begin to start to like him a lot more. Oh, and the I think the guy from China, I
Oh
hated him
yeah.
at the beginning. Hated him.
Same,
He was a
same.
well written character because he was
Yeah.
just such a just a fuck boy.
Oh, he's the arrogant,
Yeah,
obnoxious. Yeah,
yeah,
fuckboy is probably a good term to use. Uh, but like his, I really did not expect me to give a shit about his character as much as
right, right.
like like by the middle of it, I was just completely rooting for the guy, and
Yeah,
I completely would never see that coming because you know what I love about the show is like it takes surface level archetypes. Like you got the cocky, arrogant, like Peko is like that lovable, cocky brat, and then you got Kong, who's just like he's a bad guy, but he's also in a way arrogant, and you got Smile, who's kind of a nerd in a way. People could see
right.
him that way.
I'm
You've
just
got Dragon, who's kind of like seen as this machoistic, male, toxic
what was up with
masculinity.
his love interest, his cousin? Like that was weird. What was up
That
with that?
was weird. So they never really they never really specify
But they
whether or
kind
not
of they kind of acted like they were, but it was so weird.
They didn't, but they did.
Yeah.
It's kind of a gray area, their relationship, but basically he's supposedly, well, she is more, I because you don't see him really doing much in the relationship, even if they have a relationship. If you call that a relationship,
Right.
I don't know. But
She's a
basically
driver. She
the
drives in the
coach's
car.
daughter. Yeah. She's supposedly the coach's daughter,
Right.
and they're somewhat distantly related. But
Right.
yeah, I gotta admit that was probably the weakest part of the characterization that
Mm.
I think the show misses on a bit. But like, with Kazuma Dragon, you see that there is flashbacks that show that he kind of has a traumatic childhood because
Right.
there's implications that show that his father committed suicide, and that led to a lot of trauma, a lot of weight and burden on his shoulders to carry his family's name. And apparently his grandfather is the president of the academy that he represents, so Kaio. So there's a lot of like personal stuff going on, which comes to the surface later. But what I liked about it was like they take these archetypes, which is surface level, and you see them in all types of shows. You see them in shonens, you see them in so many different types, not necessarily only anime. And they go deeper and they kind of deconstruct their archetypes. I wanted to shout out to a scene with Kong. Once you get to know him, once you get once you get past the shell of his character being just an arrogant guy who thinks he's better than all the Japanese players. He kind of detests being in Japan. He wishes he
Mm.
was in Sweden or Germany. Uh, but you see, there's like a flashback where once he loses to Dragon, I think he gets really humbled. And that's what a lot of the characters go through. They lose at some point to some character, to some competitor, and that really humbles them in a way because it breaks their idea of who they think they are and how superior they are. And once that happens, that's when you get to see a lot more in what's happening in their personal lives. And with Kong, there's a flashback where he's receiving sweets from his mom, uh, and it's a package that arrives, and he sees a strand of his mom's hair, and it sort of cuts to a quick 5-second flashback of him saying goodbye to his mom. He's got his sunglasses on, he's looking cool as ever, and then he sat on the train and it's leaving China, and you can kind of see him crying behind the shades. And I thought that was such a touching moment because it just shows it really humanizes all these characters. It shows that even the ones you think are one note in a way are not necessarily, you know, sure, they could be their archetypes, but they're still human. They
Right.
still have feelings. They're still dealing with problems.
Right. Even the guy that's
Another
called a
example.
robot,
Yeah, yeah.
he's still
The
dealing with shit.
Yeah, I mean, Smile as well is so. I feel really uh, sad for him because
Mm.
it seems to me that he's been suppressed a lot as a kid. He probably never really had any friends beside Peko who vouched for him. And that's why Peko means so much to him because he's probably, he's his hero. He's the reason why he plays ping pong. He
Mm.
inspired him to pick up the sport. He taught him how to play the sport. And you see, like, it gets to a point where Smile goes the route of being a perfectionist and he gets crazy good at the sport. And that juxtaposes with Peko, who goes down a whirlwind once he loses in the
Yeah, he puts on a bunch of
preliminaries.
weight. I can't
Yeah,
even recognize him.
he's just Japanese snacking. His hair's grown out. He
Yep.
throws his paddle. He says this is goodbye, and he just becomes becomes a philandering, buffoon, really.
Right.
But but you see with Smiles, the cost of being at the top is solitude. he's just a really lonely guy. And I think a lot of these characters are in some way really psychologically isolated. You see that with Dragon.
Mhm.
You see that with Peko in a different way. So I thought that was really interesting how that as a theme really went across each of the characters you see. But in my earlier point about how all of them are really humans, you see the captain in the Katase team. So in the team that Smile and Peko play, the guy with the crazy hairdo,
Yep. Oh yeah,
who
with
const-
the it's like straight out of like a speed metal band. Like that's where its like hair is. It's
yeah,
like
Captain
wild.
Oda. He he
Yep.
he gets constantly humiliated by Smile because he knows like he's never gonna be able to compete with him.
No.
Like even though he may be a senior, he's nowhere near the same level as Smile, who's just way superior, naturally talented. But you see that even though that guy is just meant to be a one note character, uh, you see that that guy's just dealing with his own problems. You know, he's supporting his family's business, and he probably doesn't have the time to put into ping pong to become, as good as Smile or Peko. And I think a lot of that comes to fruition in the middle, where you get to see a
Mhm.
montage in the Christmas episode. That was like my favorite episode of the show. But was there a favorite moment for you in the show or in
Um.
the middle?
That's hard. Probably. Shit. Well, it's definitely not episode 5, which I thought was going to be a beach episode for a second because they spent a couple of frames at the beach, and I was kind of confused. And then it turned into like a Pepsi commercial, like a product placement. I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like, uh and there's a
Yeah,
lot of anime
the
do
scenes with
things like that.
Yurie, the daughter, I thought
Yeah.
was kind of a miss for me. It didn't really. She kind of felt like an added,
All
um,
right.
kind of an added female presence that didn't get the development maybe that she deserved. I think
Probably
her
not. I liked Butterfly Joe. I liked him.
the coach, yeah,
He was the kick that Smile needed to
he
get
did.
put in his ass so he could, rise up to where he could be.
Yep.
I really appreciated that. Like when he does like the match, he's like, "All right, so if you lose this match, you have to do anything I say." And
Yeah, be
it's
my
like,
dog if you have to.
right, you have to be my dog. Yeah. Yeah, I watched the dub, so I got to appreciate a lot of those lines.
Yeah, that was a good. That's what I wanted to ask you next. Did you watch
Oh
both,
yeah,
or did you watch
it
just
had to be
the
the dub. I there's too much going on for me to watch the subs. The dub does have the same. They just kept the Chinese voice acting in.
Yeah, the same,
Perfect.
because he's native.
Yeah,
His
that's
lines are
perfect.
native
That's
Chinese.
fine. I don't hear an American trying to do a really racist portrayal. Thank
No,
God.
no. And
I
I think
appreciate
most
that.
shows need to take a leaf out of this show and
Right.
cast
No, I agree with that.
native speakers for the native
I
roles instead of just
agree
getting an
that
American to do an impression.
yes. Like Pop Team Epic, they got a Australian that's half Japanese, half Australian, but he's a
Mhm.
native English speaker. So they got him to do the mayor of New York at the time, which I thought was that actually works. But then you got something like Free, where they had actually had good Australian English speaking natives. But then you got something like weird where they're like, son of a bitch, like Steins Gate. And it's just like, that wasn't
Hmm.
English at all. What are you doing?
The ones that really weird me out are I've seen some animes that straight up have like southwestern American Texas accents,
Oh, that's
southern
so weird.
accents.
Well, in like Dragon Ball Z, they give them like freaking like southern like hick like accents. And I'm just like, what's going on? This is weird.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I kind of I want to say like I really appreciated the dub. I thought
Yeah,
I
it's
really
great.
liked Echo and Skimoto's like
Hmm.
Smiles voice actors. I thought they were really good. Like
Yeah.
Smiles voice actor really captured that sort of stoic,
Yeah,
reserved
I
nature.
completely agree.
Peko had that kind of a
Annoying brat voice.
goofy, annoying. Yeah, he
Oh, and
captured that.
even the weird eyed guy. Oh my god! Even
Akuma, yeah, yeah.
his no voice was like nails on a chalkboard.
I love his intro where he just charges in and he like almost headbutts Peko, and they like
Yeah,
bulls. They just like they're like having a head off.
just really two big personalities.
Yeah, and it's funny because like Pecco's like like he knows you're never gonna beat me. I've beaten you.
Right.
And Akuma is this obsessive character who's like he literally counts. He knows the days it's been since he last played Peko. He knows the
Mhm.
record they
He's
have.
keeping the score.
He's just crazy obsessed. He's OCD level obsessed.
Right.
He really wants to prove that he belongs. He sits at the same table as them, and I guess like that's why a lot of his experience is humbling because when he loses to Smile later in the series, once he beats Peko and then loses to Smile, that's when he realizes that you know, he perhaps, I think that was a pretty brutal scene where Smile tells
Yeah.
him, "You lack natural talent, and it doesn't matter how much time you put in, you're never going to be good."
Mhm.
Uh, and,
It was a
I
mercy
think,
killing.
yeah, as much as that's brutal, I think we can all agree that, I mean, I've gone through certain moments in life where I've sort of felt blatantly enough someone telling me the truth about something that I may have not
Mhm.
necessarily liked to accept, but may be
Right.
true. And that is always a hard moment when you come to terms and come to realization that, oh, okay, maybe, I am wrong here. And, or maybe, this is really not for me, or I'm not capable of doing something here. Um, and I think like I really, I fell for him for a moment because it was brutal. And you
I
kind of
never did.
see I know, I know. I mean, he kind of comes off as a jackass, but
He is.
you could
I
argue he
know people
deserves
like
it.
that.
You could argue he deserves it, and that's
Yep.
completely valid as well. But it was interesting to see how all these characters, they go through their own shit.
Right.
What did you think of all the sequences where they were playing ping pong? Did you find it?
I liked the parts that were animated that there's the ball in motion. I appreciated that. I did not appreciate the manga panels in the matches. It was definitely a homage to the original source material, the manga. I just felt like it was just extremely lazy way to like animate sports. I'm sure, that's what it was. But no, when the ball is in motion, it looks great. Like even in this like a jarring art style, you're like, okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. Who's gonna win? And then they put the score up, and you're just like, ah, you're like losing your shit, especially when you want like the guy with the shit eating grin to lose.
Yeah, no, you know what? I completely agree with you. I think I have mixed opinions on
Yeah.
every time there's a lot of cross frame usage of like double
Hmm.
frames and trying to animate it. And that works in certain segments, but it gets to a point where I feel almost every match had that, and maybe they didn't
Right.
necessarily need to have it in every game of
Right.
ping pong.
The
But
stakes of every match aren't that high.
no, they're
Especially
not.
when
And
like Smiles playing against somebody you've never met. Just like okay, like that guy that came back,
yeah,
the big
I was
poofy hair
gonna,
guy.
yeah,
I don't even know if
I
he
was
has a
actually
name.
gonna bring him up. The
Yeah, the guy who
soul
was at the
searching
beach. It's
wanderer.
like what the
Yeah.
fuck?
So he shows up. So there's this side character who wouldn't, let's face it, in many other animes, he'd never be anything more than a one scene, one frame
Mhm.
character. But he loses, and then you kind of get an internal monologue from that guy's perspective, and you see that he's actually spent a couple of years playing this, and he thought he was good, and he wanted to give it another shot, but he gets brutally humiliated by Smile in the preliminaries, and
Yep.
that's when he realizes, oh shit, this is not for me. I gotta quit, and he decides to go travel. And he disappears until the last few episodes where he comes back and you see him not really, he really hasn't found his purpose, and then he goes back to watch the finals, of the final rounds, and he kind of rediscovers that love. Um, it's kind of like wholesome in a way, but I felt like, yeah, it was. I didn't expect them to like do that, to give that character that much screen time as they did. It was interesting to me, just because purely I never saw it coming. I don't think
Yeah.
shows really would try to do that sort of stuff for a character who's not even much of a supporting role. He's kind of a background character,
I kind of
but
felt
it's
like it was a waste.
yeah. You could definitely
Because
argue
I
that.
look at the episode count, and I look at, so in traditional anime fashion, this anime has, a like a 45-second intro, and then like a 45-second outro,
Oh,
and
the intro is really long. It's more than 45,
exactly that
like 2 minutes.
that help 2 minutes. Yeah, that helps my point even more. Like these episodes are made for television, so you can put 4 to 5 minutes of ads
Yeah.
spliced in between it. So when I see that, that just pisses me off. It just rubs me the wrong
Well,
way.
you gotta
I,
realize this came out 10 years ago when streaming wasn't even that big of a
right,
thing.
right.
But yeah, I could argue. I do agree the intro is too long. I
Yeah.
love it. I don't have a problem with it. I just feel
Well,
like
so there is only one, oh, maybe two, maybe three intros in anime
yeah.
that are obsessively long, and I'll just keep them on. Like,
Mm,
okay, so there was a
Dan to Dan.
show, Dan to Dance, pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
I heard it once, I was good. That it was not Chainsaw Man where I'm just like
Oh,
dancing.
well, you know
Uh,
what? You know what this show has in common with Dan to Dan and Chainsaw Man?
uh,
It's
it's odd.
No, it's well, you could yeah, they are odd, true, but they're all composed by the same composer, Kensuke
Oh,
Ushio, who is, in my opinion, the best working composer in anime.
okay,
He scored Heavenly Delusion, Dan to
okay,
Dan, Chainsaw Man, Devilman Crybaby,
yeah, that's a
Ping
lot of
Pong the
good scores.
Animation.
Yeah.
So he is really, I would say, one of the best you can get.
Mhm.
And I think he does a hell of a good job with the original soundtrack. It's a beautiful mix of
Mhm.
tender, lo-fi moments that are really emotional, and then you got some of these rock music, and then you got Dragon's theme, which is so like fucking sinister and crazy with drums, and it's a whole lot of range of emotion and
Right.
symphony that he packs in, and I thought he deserved a massive shout out for that.
No,
Kensuke Ushio.
I liked it as well. There's a couple of composers I can think of the top of my head that are in his caliber, and yeah, definitely. I'm
Yeah,
all
maybe
about
Joe
that.
Hishashi is the goat, but he's
Right.
right up there.
Oh, there's a I can never remember his name, but the guy that did Made in Abyss, he's really good too. He's a
Oh, okay.
English speaker from Australia. He's really good.
Mm,
I can never remember
all
his
right.
name though.
I don't think I can. I
No,
don't think I.
that's a crazy ass show.
Right.
Well, I don't know if we would ever review it, but like an insane score. It's like
Mm,
atmospheric. It's like a whole. It adds. It doesn't subtract. It's not like Naruto, like drums or anything like that. But
mm, interesting. Um, But getting back to
Mhm.
ping pong, was did you have a favorite episode?
Mm, no, there wasn't enough. I
True, and
maybe
I want to say that I kind of have a lot of opinions about the way it ended, but I
yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to. I don't want to talk about the ending now because there's still stuff I want to cover before. But
Sure,
I just
sure.
want to say
I'll
that
say,
what
save that for
Yeah,
myself
do
as
do
well.
save it. Do save your
Yeah.
thoughts. Hold on to it for a minute more. But what I
Mhm.
did feel was I love the fact that there's no filler, and even if there are moments of filler, it's not as
Right.
blatant as some of these animes you see today. Um, End of the day, it is a mini series,
You
and the
ain't gonna get
story
filler in a
is
miniseries.
exactly the
Gonna be
story
honest.
is self-contained, and everything is, you may or may not like how it resolves everything. Maybe some characters don't kind of get the moment they deserve, or some do, but you can't argue that they don't sort of blue ball you into hoping you set up a sequel or season 2 or whatever. It's they go for it, whatever it is, and I think there's something you got to appreciate about that. There's structurally some interesting things happening. You say that you didn't have a favorite episode because there wasn't enough.
No.
Uh, what exactly do you mean by that? What
Well,
was it? Narrative?
there's 11 episodes.
Hmm.
And I felt like the last 3 were a little like sped up. Like it
Mm.
definitely felt like it like kicked it. So the pacing for the show is great until you get to
Mm.
like those last couple episodes.
Finals. Yeah.
Exactly, like the final.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, guys, we have time. Just spend the
So,
time.
so this
It
is what happens. It's like a lot of emphasis. I would say 60% of the show, the emphasis is on Smile becoming an ace.
right.
His training, everything's about him. Peko kind of disappears in the middle. He
Oh
just takes
yeah,
a
because he
back seat.
tries to take his own life. It's just
Yeah, yeah.
his comeback is great, but
It is. It
he's in
is,
the
but
back seat. He's
it
playing
is,
second
yeah. And
fiddle.
and some may feel like, the show kind of highlights Smile but doesn't really give him the moment, because that's kind of overshadowed by Peko, who, suddenly resurges to greatness and, you know, takes back the mantle of being a hero.
Right.
And yeah, you could say that, it's classic whatever Deus Ex Machina. The hero's
Mhm.
so buff that he wins everything,
Right. He
but
can't
I
lose.
think they do make it
He
really
does
clear.
lose.
He does lose, but they do make it very clear that a real hero has no weaknesses, and a
Mm.
real hero transcends logic. So that was kind of a fun interplay
Mhm.
that they establish, even though, you could argue some of what happens may not have in real life gotten down that way. But this is a different world. It's
Yeah,
it's its own
it's
story. It's kind of got moments of surreal, impressionist art style. It kind of, I look
yeah.
at the beach scenes or the clouds, and it kind of reminds me of certain paintings of Vincent van Gogh. And
Mhm.
it was really, yeah, it really had like a unique aesthetic that stuck in my mind. uh, I don't know if others feel that way. Some may absolutely hate the style
Oh,
because
I've looked at the reviews. There are some people that I think they're like huffing paint chips, but they love it. They're 10 out of 10 across the board. I've seen many reviews about that, and I'm like, you guys, there are some great things in this anime, but it is not like the top.
Well, it may not be the top, or it may not be the standard of what you expect with
Right.
anime. And look, you can watch Demon Slayer and all these new shows. They do incredible job with what they've, CGI in anime has come a long way.
All right.
Uh
It doesn't look like
and it
shit as
it
much.
doesn't look like what it is, but this is completely unique. And
Mm,
there's something you can admire about that, the fact that it doesn't try to, it's not just banking on its story, but it is taking a bold swing even with
right.
its aesthetic. And whether that is a hit or miss, that's for you to decide, but you can't deny that they
Mhm.
do stick with it and they go for it, and that's admirable in a way.
Mhm.
But personally, I kind of loved it. I love the art style. Even the way the characters look. I think this is the only anime I've seen that comes close to actually showing you ethnically, like, Kong looks like he's Chinese.
Right.
Uh, you know,
No, I can agree to
Peko
that.
and Peko and Smile look like they're Japanese. Okay, yes, I'll agree that some of the other characterizations, like the Akuma character, or the dojo lady
Yep.
who's Peko's coach, Their
Which I
eyes
thought
are
was
kind of
funny when they pointed out that, oh, a girl player as a statue, and then you find out that was her.
yeah, yeah.
She had a
And then
knee injury. She had to retire.
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How they kind of mimic the story of because Butterfly Joe tells Smile that he faced his friend who had a knee problem,
Hmm.
and he was expected to smoke him, but he decided to lose to him because he couldn't go through with it. And that's exactly the same position Smile and Peko are in the final. Obviously, we don't see the result, but
That pissed me
you know,
off.
I know, but there's some interesting things about the way the coach, and it's kind of like coaches are people who want to transfer their competitive
Mhm.
desire onto their athletes that they train. Um, but there's one funny similarity that I came across as a film that came out this year called Challengers. I don't know if you heard of it. It's a
It's
story
pretty
about
popular. I've heard of it.
you heard of it. Everyone and their moms might have heard of it. It's about it's got Zendaya in it, so obviously everyone's heard about it. But it's basically a tennis story about two guys who love the same girl, and it's all about music and tennis and romance and all of that. And I couldn't help but notice how Challengers borrows so much from ping pong. I don't know if it's intentional. I don't know if the creators actually looked at this thing and were inspired by it or whatever, but I couldn't help but see so many similarities. So that's maybe an interesting
Hmm.
discussion to have some other day, but I just
Hmm.
thought I'd bring it up because this show is not really that widely known in the anime community. I think people kind of think of it as an underrated show in a way, or
Well,
like under the
in
radar.
if you're a huge anime fan, you've probably heard of it.
Yeah.
I definitely have heard of it. So this is probably in like the echelon of like maybe like top three like sports anime between
Mm.
Baki the Grappler. That one's kind of funny. But there's the basketball one that I always forget the name of.
Slam
That one,
Dunk.
yeah, that one
Slam
everybody
Dunk,
always.
which the film is one of the best sports animes ever made. It
Mhm.
came out a year ago. In fact, I'd argue that and this they pretty much could rival each other.
Okay.
Uh, but obviously, Slam Dunk has so many more seasons, so many more episodes
Right.
that
A lot of
you
more
can.
fleshed out.
Well, a lot of filler, but also, but at
A lot
least
of filler. They have a
the
beach
benefit.
episode.
You know what? I don't even remember anymore.
Okay.
So I'd have to re-jog my memory. But uh, they're all set in beach towns, so the beach is
Oh, okay.
always like an
Always fair.
important visual reference in these sports shows. Uh, but I think Haikyuu is another one. So
Yeah,
it's about
Haikyuu. That was another.
volleyball.
Yep.
That's
Yeah, the
another.
volleyball one.
So yeah,
Hey,
there
you can't
is.
forget about Keijo, the most
Ah, Keijo,
legendary
yes.
sports anime ever. In fact, my favorite sports anime. After
If you
watching Ping
know,
Pong the Animation, I think Keijo keeps it there.
if you know,
Um,
you know. If you don't
if you
know,
know,
you're
you know,
missing
you
out.
know. Something about giving yourself a Ouija to get faster speed. That's what I'm all about. Not to
So
completely
true.
derail you.
No, no, I'm enjoying having this conversation about different varieties of sports anime. I think we need more. And I know that you're not particularly I mean you've told me this I mean privately, but you're
Hmm.
not really into sports.
Mm-mm.
So
Like I
I knew
liked
it could
wrestling back in the day.
well, that's kind of scripted,
Yeah, yeah, loved it.
but the story is good. The stories are good. I can't deny they had good feuds and storylines. And I think a lot of that is these characters in ping pong, they're kind of like samurais in a way. They
Yeah,
have their
see
own
that?
I, I, ideals, and when they're dueling, you can actually see when Dragon's dueling, he just looks like a monster.
Yep.
He looks like a complete beast
Yeah, he's the
when
final boss for sure.
he is the final boss. The whole color purple in his color scheme
Yep.
is so prevalent. It's so sinister that the,
Purple
the
shoes.
entire yeah the shoes. I like the bit where they're like trying to make him this figure of like promotional
Yeah.
uh and to like they're trying to promote their product and they're
He's not
making the
wearing the
face.
shoes.
He doesn't give a shit, you know.
Nope.
But I want to talk about my favorite episode, which is episode 6. And that is the episode where it takes place over Christmas. So this is right at the middle of the series.
Hmm.
Once you've, you know, kind of got to know the characters a bit more, and you kind of see what's happening with each one of them and how they're at different parts of their lives. So, you know, the Christmas episode for me is like a symphony of isolation and longing. You know, it hauntingly delivers a beautiful montage that juxtaposes fleeting moments of joy with profound loneliness. It's set to a corny yet oddly melancholic 90s Japanese song sung by Kong at a karaoke. The sequence masterfully captures the emotional state of each character during the holiday. It begins lightheartedly with Kong and his mother. They're cooking dumplings. You know, he's finally kind of warming up to his Japanese class. Um, they celebrate Christmas. He starts reveling in karaoke alongside his teammates. You know, he's carefree energy contrasts sharply with the somber realities of the other characters. Smile, the ever dedicated perfectionist, spends Christmas Eve training with his coach and ultimately alone. His only companionship is the faint glow of a candle lit cake, a stock metaphor for his fading spark. Then you have Peko, once brimming with confidence. He's descended into a drunken stupor, gorging on liquor candies, and he gets dumped on by his girlfriend, and he's shouting at inanimate objects. It's just a pathetic reflection of his denial and self-loathing. And then you got Akuma and Captain Oda, who've moved on from ping pong, but they're burdened with responsibilities of supporting themselves and their families in adulthood. There's a shot of Captain Oda fixing a satellite because that's his family business. You know, Akuma's working on the road uh, as one of a construction site worker, and then it shows the quite tolling to support themselves and their families. And then you got Dragon, who's, you know, the pinnacle of discipline and success. He's invited to spend the evening with Yurie, but even in this rare moment of leisure, leaves him cold and emotionally detached. And then you got Sanada. I don't know if you recognize who that is, but that's Dragon's vice captain, the second ball character.
Yep.
Well, there's a lot of ball characters,
Kind of hard to not mix them up.
but but this one I thought was you know, this one caught me off guard actually, because there's a shot of him lying down in bed, and he's like got a picture of Yurie because he's in love with Yurie, who's Dragon's girlfriend, and there's like tissues on the bed, and you can
Ooh,
interpret that as
ooh,
however you
ooh,
want, whether it's tears or
ooh.
whatever,
We're gonna go
or
with tears.
whether. But it's interesting because it's like he has this inferiority complex over Dragon. You know, he wants what Dragon has, his girl, his competitive skill, you know, his desire to win, but he knows he can never have it. And that's all shown in just one frame. So each frame packs so much story, and you know, uh, it leads to the montage sort of crescendoing with Kong's performance. He's the only guy who's joyful and uplifted in this moment of sequence. You know, having shed the weight of his former life, he's finally accepted who he is. He's the only character who's embraced a balanced, fulfilling relationship with the game and himself. And that contrast amplifies the sadness of the others who remain trapped by their fears, failures, and unresolved desires. This scene is a microcosm of ping pong's brilliance, its ability to layer humor, melancholy, and insight into single sequence. The montage uses the seemingly trivial backdrop of a holiday to lay the bare, deep emotional rifts between the characters, making it one of the most poignant moments in the series for me. That for me was a huge highlight. And I got a bit sentimental watching that scene.
Mm,
I don't know
okay.
about you. What were your thoughts about if you even remember it, or if it
I
was
I remember bits and parts of it. Like I remember that I watched it, but it I definitely I'm just waiting for the next tournament. Like I'm waiting for that's when I watch a lot of like shonen anime, it's tournament arc. That's where I'm having the most fun. Like watching the tournament go down, Dragon Ball, My Hero, just watching the tournament happen because you get to see all these people, they do combat that they normally wouldn't
but
actually
that's
fight
what
because
it's always about, isn't it?
yeah,
If you watch anything competitive, it's always about the duel. But
yes,
it's in this case, in Ping Pong's story, it's a lot that happens off the table tennis table. It's
right,
the things that characters are going through internally, privately, or in their personal life. And that's what kind of, it's similar to what I said about archetypes. Like, it's okay for them. They could have just gone down the route of this guy just being an arrogant, cocky asshole, this guy just being a
right,
prodigy, and that would have been fine. You could have just seen them duel it out, and you could have seen who was more superior and who would win. But what the heavy lifting ping pong does is it kind of takes a step back from relying on just showing you the matches and the sport, and it kind of shows you the conflict they face off it, because ultimately it's not always about ping pong, it's about why they play ping pong. And I think a lot of them, in common, you can say, loved it as a kid. They had the
yeah,
joy for it as a kid, but they some way lost that spark. They lost that moment of magic. For Dragon, it became a burden. For Smile, he didn't have a desire for competition. It became an obsession in a way. For Akuma, it became an obsession. For
mhm,
for Peko, it was almost like this arrogant, taken for granted approach that he would win and he would never have to work hard for it. And that's why, seeing him descend into depression and try to kill himself. That's a very deep moment in the episode where he tries
mhm,
to drown himself. Akuma is trying to tell him that, we looked up to you. Like, you can't throw away the talent you have for this. People would kill to have this. And then he decides to jump, and then Akuma saves his life. And I think that's metaphorically where he's kind of reborn. And then you
yeah,
see
he got
him.
he got really lucky
He got really lucky in the freezing winter
because he
cold
was just being a
water.
drunk asshole and
Yeah. Yeah, it was just
he
gaining
almost
fat and
almost killed his friend.
yeah, and yeah, he jeopardized his friend as well. And
Right,
it's deep. You don't see shows showing you suicide, teams of like animes that show you, like, you know sports animes are always, they're kind of, they embrace it being larger than life and being competitive, but they won't
right.
show you
The
the
training
dark
arc.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but showing you the dark stuff, like
Mhm.
toxic masculinity, you know stuff like suicide, depression, apathy, obsession. These are like problems people go through even when they're not into sports. And I think that's what makes it so uh powerful, because in some way you may not necessarily completely resonate with what they're going through, but you can recognize it because you may have in some capacity experienced it, maybe
Mhm.
not to the same extent. But I think that's what I found really poignant and really emotional about the show. I thought that it really made these characters more than what they were. They were nuanced. They were really well fleshed. You can argue some were better than the others,
Right.
but that is, I would say, dramatically kind of a high point in that episode over Christmas. Is like, I would say, probably one of the peaks, one of the high points of the show. And then it leads to the last three episodes. Uh, Once you get past uh, the Christmas holiday episode, and it gets into the finals. And yeah, I guess we can talk about the way it goes into the finals. So you got Dragon, you got, I think it's Peko faces off Kong.
Yep. It's a
And
rematch because
it's a
Peko
rematch.
got his ass kicked the last time they played.
Exactly. That was what humbled him. Well,
Yeah.
Akuma beating him humbled him more, but
Right.
I think the cracks were already showing by then because he lost him the first time we see Kong in that school. Uh, but yeah, what did you think of that match?
I liked it. These are two cocky asshole characters. And
Who did you root for?
I wrote it for Peko. I Kong's just he has his character get more fleshed out, but I didn't feel sorry for Peko until he was like, all right, I'm gonna clumsily jump into this river. Then I was like, okay. And when he starts coming back, then I can start to feel for him more because he's not, an unrecognizable slob anymore. He's getting
Got his
trained
Kill
by
haircut again.
right. That's his character design. That's fine. They can't make him all different colors, so they got to give him weird haircuts. That's how they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of animes will do like a color
But
scheme,
they
like
did give him a
red,
bit of
green,
a
blue.
tan, but I think
Right. You gonna get that haircut?
no.
Yeah, I was rooting for Peko. Kong, he just
So it
wasn't as
wasn't a
good.
surprise to you that Kong lost.
No.
Right.
But
Were you at any moment unsure who would win the final?
I wasn't sure if I can't remember who faced Dragon, but I
So
didn't.
basically,
Was it Smile?
Peko beats
Kong?
Kong in the second round,
Yeah.
and then he meets third round actually, and then he meets uh Dragon in the semifinal with a
Yeah.
busted knee. And I would argue that match is more of a highlight in terms of showing you the gameplay of ping pong than the final
Mhm.
with Smile.
No, yeah,
Like that
that
was
final that was
peak.
a joke.
Well, I had two different reactions actually. The first time I watched it, and the second time.
Oh.
But what did you think of the game with Dragon? Did you
Oh,
see?
I like that. I didn't know who was gonna win.
So he was
Because
down 2 games
yeah,
to
like
begin
Dragon's
with.
like this. He's the final boss. He's the guy that he's a fuck. They're all shit up. They're all gonna get
Yeah,
their ass beat by him because he's inevitable.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and when Peiko, somehow pulls. So I play a lot of card games, and
Mhm.
being the underdog and winning,
Yeah.
no greater feeling.
No. In my opinion, the underdog is always the winner. But that's just my opinion.
Okay.
If I ever watch anything, I will always root for the underdog. But,
And if it's a
I
shonen
guess
series, they're an MC and they have MC armor. You should probably root for the MC. I don't know. Maybe you root for the bad guy because the MC is just so unlikable. I don't know.
no, it depends, I guess now more than
No,
ever.
I think the
Dynamic.
entire time, every time Smile played, I rooted for Smile.
So you didn't think that the busted knee was gonna be a big deal and it's gonna
That it did put some like pressure on. Like I
because
felt
Smiles got like an easy walkthrough to the final. I think the only
yeah,
guy he faces is Sanada, who's the vice captain of
right. Who's
Bio, and he just
yeah.
smokes him. Smiles smokes him and reaches the final, and he doesn't even care. He's not even Smiles not even bothering watching the games because he's too busy playing his what
Video
is
game.
that video
It's
game?
like
Yeah,
I just imagine him playing Pokemon
something like that.
on his Game Boy.
Game Boy, yeah, that's probably what it was. He's just sitting on the stairs playing Game Boy, waiting
Yeah.
for his hero to appear,
All right.
because that's what he expects from Peko.
And he wasn't even watching Pecco's match. What an asshole.
No, because he was convinced
That he was going to win.
that he was going to win. He didn't need to. Even though his coach asked him, "Aren't you going to watch your friend play?" He's like,
Right?
"No."
Are you guys friends? I know he's
And
already
then they
going
were
to
like,
win.
Do you believe in heroes? Well, do you not? Hero has no weaknesses. So there's some very interesting interplay there, like I said about that, and that leads you to, I think that was more than Smile beating uh Dragon. The thing that really uh impressed me most was how it finally unlocked the joy of playing ping pong for Dragon, and it's beautifully shown in this sort of surreal dream-like sequence. You see Dragon trying to climb up the hill, the cliff. He's going claw by claw up a steep hill. And then you got Smile, who's his hero, flying up to the hill, to the mountain, to the peak. And their ideologies are completely against each other, because
Right.
he thinks you don't stand a chance trying to play tricks and trying to play with a busted knee. He gets a different sort of paddle which relies on him to switch while he's making shots, because it's both sided, double sided. It's got
I'm
forgot what
not
it's
going to
called.
pretend to understand the complicated
But it's just the
way
way
they
the,
design the
the rubbers.
paddles. Yeah.
It's the rubbers need to be, they're different in both ends so that you can switch mid shot. But
Right. You
anyways,
can make it
what he's trying
spin
to say is
more, what have you.
you can't use gimmicks to beat me, because I don't believe in gimmicks. I believe in, you know, punishing yourself to be the best, going through intense suffering and training to reach to the top.
Right.
So when you see that Peko is flying in the game, where he's like effortlessly making a comeback against the odds, it kind of opens up something in Dragon, which was unexpected. And he finally discovers the joy of playing ping pong, the joy that's been lacking in him since he was a kid. And I think that's a big moment for his character, because even though he loses, he is very happy. And that's not a reaction you see a lot from him.
Yeah, every time they score, even Smiles like, yeah, like
Yeah.
maximum testosterone.
Yeah, I mean, even Akuma, tries to have a conversation with the dragon in the toilet, where comes back. He's got his hair grown out. He's got a wife, and he's trying to like tell
Yeah,
him.
the pompadour. Was he space dandy? Like, what's going on? I think he was
Yeah, they
going for
gave him a
that red line
do-over.
haircut.
Redline, yeah. I think he watched Redline, and he was
Yeah,
pretty much inspired.
I'd do the same thing.
Another great anime that we absolutely recommend, by the way.
Yep.
And then it reaches the final episode, where you see Smile and Peko fighting. But what's interesting is you never see the score, so you don't know who's winning. But it just turns into a duel, and as this duel starts to take place, it kind of blurs the lines of reality, because you really don't know what's going on, and all you can see is Smile tearing up because he's happy because his heroes appeared, and you can see Peko just elevating, and that's where, before we could even get more of the game, more of the deal, it kind of takes a time skip, and then it obviously leads to the resolution. But that was your problem, wasn't it? That it
I was
didn't.
so fucking mad. Nothing pisses me off more than in an anime where it's two guys that are fighting that, work all their way up, and it's just two guys. They did the proverbial two guys punching and it says the end question mark. I was so pissed off. And I was a little confused. I was very angry.
You know what? When I first watched it, I felt exactly the same. Although I wouldn't say I felt angry, but
Right.
I kind of felt let down in a way. I thought,
Mhm.
it should have had a bit more, or at least an episode more on their game, which would have
Right.
been nice, and then an episode to resolve it. That was my first reaction when I first watched it. But when I watched it the second time, I felt uh it didn't bother me as much as it did the first time.
Mm.
And that's just me personally. I completely get your point of view. I think it's valid. I think,
Maybe I
you
got to
know,
watch it
you
again.
no, it's not necessarily
Just get
that.
even more angry.
I think the time skip was both unexpected but appropriate, because honestly, I'm sitting here trying to think of a single flaw, and the only one I have a nitpick was I wanted a few more minutes of Smile and Peko's match, of
Right.
them clashing, their rackets raging,
Right.
and
Them
ultimately,
having a good game.
yeah, ultimately, this was a story about people and their ambitions, their fears, about their relationships with each other and themselves. I'm sad to see it go, but unlike so many other great shows, I don't want it to drag its welcome beyond. And I think, it's effective in a way because then it cuts to a montage that some people may not like. But I
I
thought
did
it sort
not.
of it showed all of them as kids when they were learning to play
Hmm.
ping pong, and that was kind of a wholesome moment for them, for each character. Because it's like the more I think about it, the more it makes sense for it to show that, because this series is about characters who take the game of table tennis very seriously, but who had lost their reason for why they started playing in the first place. The characters rediscovering their love of the game is a big moment for all of them and their arcs. So flashing back to them beginning to the love of the game in the first place makes perfect sense for the climax of the series.
Mm.
Uh, but I still wish it had a bit more minutes with Peko
Right.
and Smile. Uh, but
Yeah.
who do you did you feel like there would be a winner? Like, who would be the winner? Did you?
It showed it. Did you see?
Yeah, yeah, no,
Uh,
no. But like, while the game was going on, did you think who was gonna win? Did you have
no,
any
no,
like?
it's up in the air. That's the
So
thing.
you
No,
didn't think the
well,
show
there,
choice
there's a
here?
way it should happen, and then there was just the
Mm.
way that it did happen.
So how should it have happened according to
I think
you?
Smile should have just pushed his shit in and just taken advantage of his knee. But
Mm.
because the type of character he is, I don't think he would ever do that. So it's only
Mm.
right that he gives him a good game, but he makes him earn it,
You see, I don't
earn
feel
the
that
victory.
way. I don't feel that way. I don't feel like
Mhm.
he gifted him a victory at
Well,
all.
we don't
Eh,
know.
because yeah, it's open to interpretation, and
Mhm.
each one can interpret it the way they want to. Your take or my take, both is completely
Mm.
valid. But I feel, because you see at the start, the coach tells him, you sure you want to go through this? Your friend's playing with a bad knee. He's like, I know how to exploit that. He literally says, I'm gonna make him play this way, which will make him it will make it worse for him to react with a bad knee. But I think it's the same argument as how Peko beat Dragon with a busted knee and came back from 2 games down. I don't think Dragon gifted him that win. I think he
No, Dragon
actually,
definitely didn't.
yeah, and the same thing I feel about this game. I don't think Smile gifted him any advantage or any point. I think Peko just elevated,
Mhm.
and he carried that right to the end. And that kind of shows why he was, you know, the most superior player
Oh,
amongst.
I respectfully disagree.
So
We don't know.
what did you think?
I think we don't know because it kind of feels like they ran out of budget. Like that's why they didn't animate the rest of that scene. It because it's 11
Mm.
episodes. It's not your
Yeah.
standard
Yeah.
12 or 13. Like I did like Smile smiling in the end. That was adorable. But I want to
He
know the
licks his
outcome of
blood,
the
and
last
then
match. I feel like I got robbed. Like I feel like the show it
you do
makes me
see the
want
outcome.
more.
You do,
you,
but that's the point, John. That is the point. It's
Mhm,
not to give, it's not to service. It's not fan
mhm.
service. It's to leave you wanting more, and it's
Right.
to leave you thinking, I wish I could get a bit more, because you
Mhm.
know, that leaves it on a high note. So many shows love to show you fan service moments, right? The big guy, the bad guy getting defeated, whatever. Like we love to see that shit because it works. But the fact that it kind of pulls the rug right there and leaves you at that moment, this is not something I've seen. I mean, it's not the first time I've seen this. I've actually seen some other stuff, sports related, that do similar things.
Mm.
So that's why it wasn't a big of a deal for me. I can't completely get it why it was for you, and
Mhm.
I'm not, I'm not taking you down on it. I think that's perfectly valid as well. It should, like I said, I wish there was more between Peko and Smile. In fact, I was really underwhelmed that the final scenes after the time skip didn't have a scene with Peko and Smile, because I thought they were, their relationship was probably the most special thing about why they played ping pong.
I
And
did like that Smile became a teacher. I did like that.
yeah, he abandons wanting to be a competitive player, and
Yeah.
he decides that he's just
I'm just
happy
gonna be a
being a
teacher.
teacher.
I
Yeah,
like
and
teaching kids how
dr-
to play table tennis.
yeah, and Dragon, gets cut off from the national team, and he becomes kind of becomes a businessman like his
Yep.
grandfather. He's wearing a suit. His girlfriend's become a really famous fashion designer in London or whatever.
Oh,
And then
that
you've got
Peiko makes it to the team. I'm just like,
uh Keiko plays in the Olympics.
yeah.
Kong becomes a Japanese citizen and makes it to the Olympics team. You
Mhm.
see that briefly on the newspaper.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, the coach is still around, and Akuma, he gets a family and needs to provide, so he leaves. He has to find a different business or something.
Yep.
But yeah, it just shows you like these guys, life happens. They move on. Uh, and ping pong was a reason why they played. Uh, their joy for the sport was why they played. But then they realized there were other things at play. Some pursued it, some didn't, and
Mm.
I thought that was really nice to see in a coming of age story, that it kind of shows you what type of adults they become, and how their personalities changed compared to where they were when you first meet them. But do you have any thoughts on that, like time skip?
I hate it. I
Yeah.
like some parts of it, but I just hate the idea that I feel like I just got robbed. I
So
feel like I
how should it have ended? How would you have liked to see the show
with
end?
their whole fight being animated. I don't need an epilogue. I never need an epilogue actually. Um, so something live action that had an epilogue that made me extremely angry was I don't know if you saw it, the ending of Harry Potter. I was so upset.
Which one? The first or
The
the
last Harry Potter movie. There's an epilogue in the entire series.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was all
Well,
fan
Lord of the
service.
Rings has an epilogue as well.
I
That doesn't
that
make
that
it
one doesn't
bad.
bother me. It's when an epilogue it just feels like tacked on. This particular one
Mm.
doesn't feel tacked on, but it does feel like it's taking from something. It's taking from the time that they could have.
But that is how the manga is. It
Right.
ends.
I think they should have did an anime original ending. It might have not have stuck the landing though.
Could
That's
it
the
could
only
be it
like
could be
downside.
it could be budget. It could be
It could be. It could be a lot of things. Like the
because
11
obviously,
episodes thing. Like
personally, I wouldn't have minded an
additional.
episode
Yeah,
just being
just like
so.
one or
I would have
two.
I would have I would have loved if it was episode 11 was just their game, and
Yeah,
episode 12 was the aftermath.
yeah. The
That will
epilogue.
that would Yeah,
That's fine.
that's fine, but I respect them for it's a bold decision, because
Right.
it's kind of taking you off the whole action just when this is the moment you're waiting for.
Right. And you
You
only
want to
find
see
out
match point.
because there's a frame and they show you who has first, second,
Yeah.
third.
Yeah, in the
And it's a
dojo,
picture.
in the dojo where Smile becomes a teacher, at Miss Tamura's dojo, you see a photo frame of Peko winning it, Smile second, and
if they didn't give me that, I'd
but
be
you know
so
what?
angry.
I don't think you realize, but there was one frame in the earlier episodes of their childhood which showed Smile winning it and Peko coming second. I don't think you noticed that.
No, I don't even remember it.
Yeah, I know. I picked up on that, so I thought that was
Okay.
an interesting sort of inverse because
Okay.
you'd
They
expect Peko just to be
just to
unstoppable,
dominate. Yeah.
but true. I guess the ending
It was very
can't
subversive.
satisfy. Yeah, it's subjective. It's gonna be polarizing. Personally, I don't have a like I said, the first time I had a problem with it. The
Yeah.
second time I could appreciate it a bit more.
Mm.
Um, I think the the aftermath, the final montage showing the characters years later, it kind of provides closure without oversimplifying their arcs. Life moves on. While not every dream is fulfilled, every character finds a sense of peace and balance.
Mm.
Story ends not with a grand triumph, but with small, meaningful victories. Staying
Mhm.
true to the series' grounded and human approach. And that's how it ends. So I guess you want to let's go to final thoughts. You want to give it a I know your ending. I know the ending's going to affect this for you, but let's hear it.
So a wise man said something. There's an anime YouTuber that does reviews.
Mhm.
His name's Glass Reflection. He says the ending is paramount, and I agree with that. So my final thoughts for Ping Pong the Animation. I normally don't like sports anime, but this anime was pretty decent watch. You just have to get past the giant art style, and some of the animation will kind of suck you in. You're just like, okay, all right, I want to see these brutal ping pong matches. The ending, I do not do not like. I felt like it was executed like okay, but it
Mm.
it didn't make me feel like it was a little rushed. Uh, who knows what that's for or why it was like that? But we're gonna go with it was adapted from the manga. I dock a point for the Pepsi placement in episode 5. I don't like that in anime.
Blatant Pepsi.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I will
Um,
agree. I didn't see that coming. I
I
was
don't
like,
like that.
product placement.
It's different when it's a meme. Like Kogias,
Maybe they
Pizza
needed
Hut.
the money. Maybe they needed the money.
Well,
So
maybe they could have put 2 more episodes out.
maybe another
uh,
Pepsi can showing up would have done that.
right. So I'm gonna give it a score of a 6 out of 10. Like I feels like above average. I had very high hopes for this. Like I wanted to give it a 10. I really wanted to, but just those frames, the manga frames, the homage. I don't like that. I like my animation beautiful. It was very style. I wouldn't say it's style over substance because it has a lot of substance. It was more substance over style, I guess.
More substance over style.
Yes, like it
I
has
that's
a lot
interesting.
more there. Like the story
Hmm.
is a lot. It pays way higher over the animation.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I respectfully disagree because for me, I always value story over style.
Hmm.
Because style is flexible. Without story, there is no narrative. It's just pretty pictures, or it can be ugly pictures. But I agree with your frustrations on the ending, and I can see why a lot of people would feel that way. And I do agree that the art style can be jarring for traditional anime watchers who've perhaps grown accustomed to watching anime in a certain standard. Uh, but I think Ping Pong, the animation is a underrated gem. I think it's a marvelous achievement. Uh, it's a beautiful coming of age story about 5 kids, and it's one of those rare sports animes that's not necessarily obsessed with the sport that it's depicting, but it's actually taking the effort to show you why each of the characters want to play the sport and what they're going through. And it's always tricky seeing coming of age stories because it's complicated time in anyone's life, being a teenager and kind of going in your early 20s, figuring out who you are as a person. And I think I loved how layered and how the character development of each character was so well fleshed out, and some work better than others. I'll agree that Yurie and some of those other characters may have necessarily not got what they should have deserved. Maybe they were added on, but when it comes to the main protagonists, all of them had such meaningful conflicts and story and arcs, and I think the animation is unique. I can vouch for this and say that you'll never see anything like this. And it is for that reason impressive. The animation works better when the ball is in motion. I'll agree with that. Uh, who knows what the budget was and why they couldn't perhaps make it longer, but the ending bothered me the first time, but the second time it was something I could appreciate a bit more because I understand what they're trying to get at, uh, in terms of like why these guys want to play ping pong and what their story's approach is. And for that reason, I think it stuck with me. It resonated with me. There's something in each story, and I would like to give it a 9 out of 10.
Hmm. I'm having a flip flop of Redline, where I rated a lot higher than you did, and
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, what red line? Yeah, true. Red line was
no
similar.
story, all style.
Yeah, red line for me. I guess that's just our philosophies, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think you can appreciate
I can
style a
appreciate
lot.
a good story as well. It's just sometimes the style can
Make or
help.
break it for you.
Yeah, it can help
And
me
that's
enjoy it
completely
more.
fine, by the way. It's
Right.
there's no right or wrong rating for this show.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it worthy of having a discussion because
I
you know
agree.
what? We can be on different spectrums. We don't need to, necessarily agree on everything we talk about. And I think that's why I love doing this.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to always see different perspectives and like I can take a lot from what you said and reflect on that and
Mhm. And I can do
hopefully
the same.
yeah, and that's what makes having these conversations so worthwhile.
Mhm.
But
I agree.
that being said, Ping Pong the Animation, 10 years old, watch it if you can. I'm sure you can find a way to stream it. But let's go to our recommendation
All
for
right.
the next episode.
So the recommendation, I wanted to do a musical. Um, I saw Wicked in the theater. Kind of got me itching for a musical. Adi, I know you're not the biggest fan of musicals, but you did say you were kind of interested in reviewing this one. Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, 2007.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street?
I knew about this growing up. I always wanted to watch it, but
Awesome.
I didn't really manage to. So I really want to watch this. And
Mhm.
yes, I may not necessarily be the biggest musical fan, but that makes me even more keen on wanting to cover this. So I'm actually glad you picked this.
Yeah. So I have a little synopsis written. I don't want to spoil it too much. So it's based off the stage play. I definitely didn't see that because I'm a nerd, but not that crazy. So dude wrongfully gets in prison for 15 years, and this is during the times where the prisons were like in Australia. Um, and then he gets sent back to London. He gets released, and he swears he will have his revenge. You don't want to get spoiled for Sweeney Todd 2007. Watch it before we air our next episode, which roughly will air in the next 2 weeks.
All right, Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber, a Tim Burton story. We'll look forward
Okay.
to that one on our next episode. It's goodbye from me.
Yep. See you, Space Cowboy.